In 2018, about a year after the theatrical version of Justice League was released, I made a video that explored the character of Superman and his development over the course of decades into a pop culture American Christ figure. In particular, I looked at how Zack Snyder's interpretation of Superman had revived the Jesus connections, with complicated results. For the past few years, though, the journey with this version of Superman had felt unfulfilled, largely due to the fact that Snyder himself wasn't able to complete his own vision of Justice League. It seemed that how Snyder intended to continue or complete his Christ figure arc with Superman was going to be left to just my imagination. But that all changed in February of 2020. The mythical Snyder Cut was real, and we were all going to be able to see it for ourselves. The question was, how would Zack Snyder's unencumbered vision measure up with what years of my imagination had constructed? In his cut of Justice League, Snyder wastes no time bringing Superman to the forefront of our minds, with a dramatic reminder of Superman's death which occurred in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Yet, beyond these opening shots, Superman himself does not appear for nearly 2/3 of the film's runtime. During that span, Snyder is intent on making Superman's physical absence felt, but also making his spiritual presence equally impactful. In this way, most of the film plays less like a New Testament gospel and more like the Acts of the Apostles, as the various heroes unite and take action in Superman's name and memory. It was this aspect of the film that helped me settle on my first major observation about it, namely that Superman's death seems to have greater cosmic significance than his resurrection. It is his death, after all, that awakens the mother boxes and sends a signal across the universe that the Earth is vulnerable now that its most powerful protector is gone. Moreover, Superman's absence results in a deep global mourning and a commensurate spike in chaos that must be confronted by the remaining heroes. The Man of Steel's resurrection, by comparison, is witnessed by only a few people besides the core Justice League members, and by the end of the film, his return does not yet appear to be a widely known event. Interestingly, the sequence somewhat aligns with a narrative Christ arc, since Jesus' crucifixion was what was most visible to the power structures in place at the time, namely the Roman government, the Jewish religious leaders, and the Jerusalem populace as a whole. Jesus' resurrection appears, on the surface at least, to be a lower key and less earth-shattering occurrence. The empty tomb is discovered by women, and before his ascension, Jesus is only seen by his disciples, a few travelers along the road, and, according to the Apostle Paul, a group of 500 people at once. Not exactly the thousands that followed him around nearly every day before his crucifixion. However, just like in the theatrical cut of the film, it's at the point of Superman's resurrection that the Christ figure narrative begins to break down. Thankfully, Snyder's take on Superman's revival removes the cheap existential angst.
You won't let me live. You won't let me die.
In its place, there's a more authentic remembering and recognition of identity, but of course with the obligatory superheroes fighting each other scene. And Snyder certainly reflects more profoundly on Superman's return in a series of scenes showing the intimate reunions of Clark with his mother and Lois. A short time later, Superman's reemergence visually reflects and audibly echoes his first flight in Man of Steel, as he exits the Kryptonian ship in the same dramatic fashion, with the voices of both of his fathers reverberating in his mind and in our ears.
I know it's been hard, Clark.
But you gave hope to their world.
You need to show them who you are.
Love them, Cal. The way we loved you.
This scene is also notable for the inclusion, and in fact Superman's choice of, wearing a black suit, even when his iconic blue and red was an option. Of course, Snyder has been vocal about his eagerness to include Superman's black suit, which in the comics is often referred to as the Recovery or Solar Suit, as it aided Superman in absorbing solar energy, thus restoring his powers following his fatal battle with Doomsday. Snyder seems to at least hint at this practical purpose for the black suit as Superman flies into space towards the sun, and in perhaps the last overt nod to Jesus, the scene is punctuated by a crucifix-esque pose. But overall, it seems clear that Snyder is less interested in fulfilling the Jesus allegory that he set up in earlier films featuring Superman than he is in positioning the Man of Steel for future stories that may or may not ever come to fruition. For example, Snyder's Jesus allegory is undermined, or at the very least complicated, by various characters' visions of a nightmarish apocalyptic future, in which it's strongly implied that Superman has become something of a henchman for the villainous Darkseid, and thus must be either defeated or somehow redeemed. Knowing this, it's interesting that Zack Snyder himself has acknowledged that in his director's cut of Justice League, Superman has not yet fully developed into the character we recognize from decades of storytelling.
I really felt like my Superman needed to, at every step, he has to sort of level up and sort of learn something and be something different. Because in the end, the idea is that, or what I had planned was that, the sort of final step for Superman is kind of his real return, or his real sort of coming into what I would consider almost like the classic Superman.
So, where does this leave Zack Snyder's Superman now? Well, I find that Justice League ultimately leads to the same destination in 2021 that it did in 2017. The journey to get there just so happens to be much more scenic and interesting now than it was then. But I'm also left with a similar what-if question. What if Zack Snyder were given the opportunity to see the entirety of his vision through to the very end? What is the classic Superman moment he has tucked away in his imagination? And what might it mean for the Christ figure image of the character he first brought to the screen in Man of Steel? Would this moment, as I discussed in 2018, not only serve to connect Jesus and Superman, but meaningfully contrast them as well? I have my doubts that we'll ever know. But obviously, my doubts have been dispelled before, and I hope they can be again.